Released in December after spending 5 months in prison and avoiding extradition to Japan, the threat of rearrest had been hanging over anti-whaling activist Paul Watson until now. Interpol has suspended the red notice issued for the founder of the Sea Shepherd environmental group. He'd been sought by Japan for allegedly causing damage to one of its whaling ships back in 2010, among other charges. He joins us now in studio along with his lawyer, William Julier. Thank you so much to both of you for being with us this evening. We'll start with you, Paul. You've said that this decision marks another step forward for justice, and it sends a powerful message to those who attempt to use legal systems to silence defenders of the environment. How does it feel to have this red notice issued, and is it definitive?
Well, after 13 years, it's good to see that there's a suspension, but it's temporary. They'll make a final decision in June, and hopefully that'll be in my favor. But the one thing I wanted to point out here is that Interpol has been weaponized by many countries for political purposes to go after whistleblowers, activists, and dissidents, and that should not be allowed, really.
And how exactly does it do that? Yet you're saying that it's weaponized, it pursues activists, dissidents, whistleblowers. That is something that a lot of critics say when it comes to Interpol. So why exactly do you feel so strongly about that, and what kind of evidence do we have that that's happening?
Well, in my case, I wasn't even at the place where the so-called crime took place, but my real crime was a camera, a television show that we had for 10 years that humiliated Japan, and they want their retribution, and they're coming at me personally. They take it very personally, and so that's what we're dealing with. But you know, when I was arrested in Greenland, there were 12 members of the Danish police that were flown in to arrest me, and they were very tough, and they came up and they pulled me off the thing, and I said, "Why the overkill?" And I found out why. Because Japan has described me in that red notice as an extremely dangerous armed terrorist. And that was completely mind-blowing. I've never injured anybody in my life. I've never even been convicted of a crime. So Japan has really exaggerated and embellished this in their attempt to get me sent back to Japan.
Well, remind us, if you can, of the initial incident that eventually led to your arrest.
Well, what happened was that we had a vessel working with us called the Adigil that was deliberately rammed and destroyed by a Japanese whaling vessel. The captain of that vessel boarded the Japanese vessel to confront the captain who had just destroyed his ship, and they immediately arrested him and charged him with trespassing and obstructing business. And they took him all the way back to Japan on the ship, and where he was charged, and then they made a deal with him. If you say Paul Watson ordered you to board that ship, we will give you a suspended sentence. And that's what he did. And I then got charged with conspiracy to do the things that he did. After he was released, he signed an affidavit saying, no, I lied about this in order to get the suspended sentence, because they were threatening me with years in prison. So, and that affidavit was accepted by the US, by France and that, but it certainly, Japan says, no, we don't recognize it. And so they still want to come after me.
Well, let's bring in your lawyer, William. You're here as well with Paul. You cite as well, and the organisation cites inconsistencies and inaccuracies, just leading on from what Paul was saying there, even going as far as to call them lies that were contained in the Japanese case file. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Lies, absolutely. Factual evidence that it's not evidence. And inconsistencies such as claiming that someone was harmed on a boat standing 10 or 15 meters away from where this bottle containing a liquid hit, not gas. So it was physically impossible for this man to be harmed by this liquid. We have videos showing that this man, if he was injured by his own pepper spray, because they were spraying pepper gas at the vessel, which was cruising by. So inconsistency of a case with obvious counter evidence that what is claimed to have happened and caused this injury is not true. Not even saying that Paul Watson would be connected because he was not on the scene. So a case that does not exist, number one, and this connected with the second obvious part of this case, and which obviously we also put in the Interpol application, which is the case being inconsistent. If Japan is still continuing going after someone more than 14 years after events which did not take place, there's a reason. And if the reason is not going after criminal wrongdoing, the reason is obviously political being a broad concept, and going after environmental activists, going after dissidents, going after someone who grew as a symbol of anti-whaling, which for some political figures in Japan is an important issue, probably with economical connections that maybe they do not want to admit. And so this is a demonstration of the political motivation of this prosecution, which becomes a persecution, and Interpol must take out of the system any red notice that is connected with political motivation. This is within Interpol's constitutional rules, and this is what we have brought forward. We seem to have been heard, at least for this first analysis carried out, and we thank the CCF very quickly upon reception of our arguments, and we now, as Paul said, wait for final relief in June. I must say that we are confident. Mm-hmm. We stay cautious, of course, because we do expect that Japan is maybe going to try one or two last dirty tricks, but we are strong with our arguments. We know we are saying the truth on all sides, and we are confident that the CCF will confirm this first analysis and give us a full relief in June.
And between now and June then, Paul, are you free to leave France?
No, I wouldn't be leaving France. I'm also speaking at the UN conference on the ocean in June, which, by the way, the Japanese threatened to pull out if I'm allowed to speak. So we'll see what happens. One of the things that's missed over this whole thing is the Japanese destroyed a €2 million ship, cut it right in half. 6 crew members were thrown into the water. A cameraman had his ribs broken. There were no consequences whatsoever. No legal consequences.
Could have got killed.
Yeah. Nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. Also, I was shot. I had a bullet removed from my, I had a Kevlar vest, and I was shot on camera. And this incident with the ship was on camera. It was all fully documented. No legal consequences. So Japan does what it wants, and it has to be kept in mind that where they're killing whales is called the Southern Ocean Whale Sanctuary, and they're in violation of an international moratorium on commercial whaling, and that was upheld in 2014 by the International Court of Justice, which they just simply ignored. So Japan has ignored the highest court in the world, and yet they expect that countries should cooperate to send me back to them, where they threatened me with 15 years in prison.
And how did it feel having that threat hanging over your head while you were in prison in Greenland, the prospect of potentially spending over a decade behind bars in Japan?
Well, I see every situation as an opportunity, and that was an excellent opportunity to continue to focus international attention on Japan's illegal activities in killing whales, and also with the added bonus of focusing attention on Denmark's illegal killing of pilot whales and dolphins in the Faroe Islands.
And how can this be put to an end definitively, international whaling?
Well, the laws are there. It's all illegal. So the problem is countries don't enforce it. There's a lack of economic and political motivation to uphold international conservation law. So we have all these laws out in the ocean to protect life and diversity, but they're meaningless without enforcement and the lack of government will to do anything about it.
Well, after, campaigning for so long, I believe you've been, an activist for more than 50 years now. Why are you still continuing? It's obviously something that you are still very passionate about, despite the fact that you have been treated in this particular way and despite the arrests that you've previously been subjected to and having spent those 5 months behind bars as well in Greenland.
Well, the reality is if the ocean dies, we die. and the ocean is dying. We're destroying diversity and interdependence in the ocean. We've seen a 40% diminishment in phytoplankton populations since 1950, which provides 70% of the air, of the oxygen in the air we breathe and sequesters CO2. Why is that happening? Because we're killing off whales and dolphins and other creatures that provide the nutrient base for the phytoplankton. And if phytoplankton disappears from the sea, we all die. It's as simple as that. And for the most part, people are unaware of that. But whales are actually the farmers of the ocean. They're fertilizing these vast crops of phytoplankton and therefore are giving an invaluable service to all living things on the planet.
And how has activism evolved over that time? Climate change, obviously a massive issue, particularly when we're seeing this evening, just a few minutes before we spoke, Donald Trump signing an executive order in relation to the coal industry.
Well, the problem is that as resources become diminished, there's more of a push to extract those resources, which means there's going to be more protests against it, which means there's going to be more suppression and repression against people who are trying to protect the environment. And it's a vicious circle. So it's going to become much, much more difficult. When I was doing things 20, 30 years ago, it was a lot easier than now because government rules and regulations are far more oppressive now, and there's more of a political will to stop anybody trying to protect the environment.
And William, this raises a lot of questions as well about, how we can protect the rights of activists. We've seen issues here in France as well relating to that issue. How do you find a balance then between enforcing the law on one hand and protecting environmental campaigners and activists?
I think the border, the limit is actually quite easy to find. If people commit violent actions against other human beings, I think we're in a different world. If we are talking about activism, meaning peaceful demonstration, climbing in trees, standing in front of a forest to stop people destroying it, even why not throwing stink bombs at a ship. I think we are not in something that should be criminalized with the consequences that we are facing here or in other cases where people are interrogated by police during days, 3 days, sometimes 4 days under terrorist legal frameworks. Interpol must and will, and I think is starting with this case, to do that very clearly and is going to, I think, draw this line very clearly in June. Some actions must be considered as criminal actions. Some actions must be considered as non-criminal but good actions. And the very, I think, strong message that we expect from the CCF, from this Commission of Control of Files of Interpol in June, is to clearly say that we are on the good side here. And it happens when you are prosecuted that it is wrong and that the states going after someone are not on the good side because on the side of one authority, but are on the bad side. And every time this happens, it's good that a court or a commission or a UN rapporteur says so clearly, because this is what will probably also, on legal grounds, bring some change.
We'll have to leave it there for now, but thanks so much for being with us this evening. We really appreciate your time and for coming in to speak with us as well. Paul Watson, thank you so much, and William Juliet, and the best of luck in June. We'll speak to you again soon after that, I'm sure.